two worlds collided just a few hundred meters apart on the outskirts of Remscheid in April 1945. One, a desolate wasteland of ruined trenches and collapsed brick walls littered with burned panzer troops, torn Hitler-Jugend armbands, and school satchels carried by boys thrust into a war they could never have understood. The other, a requisitioned schoolhouse, where American nurses, faces smudged with fatigue and aprons stiff with dried disinfectant, boiled water in enamel pots and laid out bandages on desks that had once held arithmetic primers. A stark, almost theatrical contrast that seemed to underscore the devastation inflicted upon youth and the fragile sanctuary that tried to restore it. Corporal Samuel Pierce led a line of child prisoners across the rubble, boots crunching over the splintered remains of a blackboard blown into the road, boys moving like shadows, eyes wide and hollow, bodies too small for rifles, too young for battle, shaking from exhaustion and fear rather than malice. Inside the schoolhouse, Nurse Evelyn Grant, after 18 hours on duty, felt a jolt as she heard the shuffle of small, hesitant steps, German murmurs threaded with terror, and she stepped into the doorway, encountering first a boy staring at her apron as though it were a weapon, then another staring at the floor, and a third staring at nothing at all, the air thick with wet wool, antiseptic, and the distant smoke of artillery that had only ceased that morning. Pierce muttered, "More strays," though Evelyn corrected him silently, knowing these boys had been pushed into paths not of their choosing. She approached cautiously, noting the trembling hands still streaked with mud, the gaunt faces marked by hunger, cracked lips, and eyes glazed with days without proper food. Speaking in halting German, she coaxed the first boy forward, guiding him to a desk where a narrow shrapnel wound above his ankle revealed the violence he had endured. She cleaned and dressed it patiently, allowing the quiet of care to communicate safety, as the boy's terror wrestled with instinct, propaganda teaching him to fear mercy. Nearby, Sergeant Lewis carried another boy, unconscious from blood loss, muttering in disbelief at the volume of children flooding in from the surrounding woods, hundreds more hiding, waiting to be found. As Evelyn worked, she sensed the fragility of trust forming in small increments. A boy offering his arm for vaccination without flinching, another shivering as he handed her a keepsake he had carried through the ruins. But trust was delicate. Each new arrival, each hand touched, was a negotiation with fear. Boys refused food until seeing the nurses eat, sniffed supplies for hidden poisons, flinched at instruments, convinced kindness was a trap. Yet slowly, through persistence, they began to bend, to accept nourishment, to whisper questions like, "Do biscuits mean beauty?" and to seek the human connection they had been denied for years. Days stretched, and the schoolhouse became a pressure chamber of need, boys clustering, refusing to sleep apart, panicking at the removal of torn boots, trembling at the presence of strangers, their indoctrination dissolving only gradually under patient care. Supplies were scarce, rations rationed, arguments flared over meager cans of soup, and Evelyn and the nurses moved from cot to cot, smoothing blankets, brushing hair, offering reassurances, small gestures of consistency that became lifelines. The strain was not just physical, it was psychological, the weight of fear and deprivation etched into every fragile frame. When orders arrived to transfer the children to a holding camp, the fragile trust threatened to shatter. Some froze in disbelief, others panicked, clinging to nurses or hiding under desks, unsure if survival meant loss. Evelyn knelt beside trembling hands, promising safety, nourishment, and care, whispering words they were only beginning to comprehend, while Corporal Pierce and other soldiers tried to maintain calm, knowing that children's fear was the residue of propaganda, not defiance. The transfer began at dawn, trucks lined up, military police forming careful lines, the children stepping in hesitantly, some resigned, some coaxed, the smallest boy refusing to move, wrapping his arms around Evelyn's waist, sobs silent, but shaking her to the core. She carried him to the truck, allowing exhaustion to loosen his grip, offering a touch of human certainty as the convoy rumbled down the road, dust rising in ghostly clouds, leaving the schoolhouse quiet and hollow, echoing with memories of lessons once taught and illusions once believed. At the camp, the children looked smaller, swallowed by tents and rows of strangers. Yet at the first sight of Evelyn, relief flooded their faces, as if the world could still contain mercy. And in that moment, she understood a truth that no war could erase. The conflict might end, but the work of restoring humanity, trust, and childhood had only just begun.
Please don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon.